I'll start off by introducing myself. My name is John Jenkins. Everyone calls me JJ. I work at Amazon, and my team at Amazon builds the technology that is in just walkout stores. So if you've seen that store out there at the center or at the front of Javits Center where you can just like walk in and not go through a checkout, my team builds those. And so I'll turn it over to Bill.
I appreciate it. So my name is Bill Toney. I don't have a cool name like JJ, so Bill Toney. Head up global market development for Avery Dennison, and my team is really responsible for helping retailers and brands all throughout the world understand how to take emerging technologies, and particularly sensor technology like RFID, how is it really going to help to transform their business process from an ROI perspective, technology perspective. So that's what my team does globally. Been in emerging tech and retail for 28 years, 4 years running retail stores, about 25 years doing emerging tech and trying to innovate around retail. So happy to be here and look forward to the discussion.
Cool, yeah, so we want to start off by getting you guys fired up and activated, so I'll see if I can get people excited here. So everyone who loves standing in checkout lines, raise your hand. Okay, I've largely failed. We'll see if Bill can do better. You can fire a question.
All right, how many people have actually abandoned a purchase because the line was too long? Raise their hand.
Okay, Bill wins. I see how it works. Well, so Bill and I were talking yesterday in advance of this session, and you mentioned this is your 23rd time at NRF. I've only been here twice. So you clearly have an idea of what the trends have been here over the years, and I guess I'd be curious to know, like, what are your perspectives on the trends, and even some maybe micro trends about, how shoppers' frustration sort of factors into retail.
Yeah, it'd be great. Appreciate it. First of all, it's great to see so many people here at NRF. I mean, it's packed this year, and it's really exciting. I think there's really three micro trends, and going to different presenters and then kind of walking around the NRF this year, I think there's three key things. Number one, consumer experience. And I think post-COVID, people are coming back in the store, and I think people are really trying to understand, how do I create a frictionless consumer experience to really help drive more brand loyalty, what retailers call NPS or Net Promoter Score. And that seems to be a really big kind of theme as you kind of walk around the show and kind of listen to different executives talk about retail. I think the second one's really around labor optimization. So how do we actually take labor and save that labor and plow it back into things that have a little bit more value for the customer, or in some markets that have a labor scarcity, how do I actually run my operations with trying to optimize my labor? And the third really is around theft. I think a lot of people have heard some themes around theft. And 3, 4, 5 years ago, you would hear this theme around loss prevention. So people would put hard tags on products and try to prevent theft. And obviously that's still a strategy, but a new theme emerging is what we're calling kind of loss detection. So how do you take analog technology like EAS technology and make it a smart sensor technology where you can get data analytics and start predicting certain things, and start to understand in a retail operation what actually left your store so you can replenish that item and make sure it's there for the next customer. So I think those are kind of the three big things I would say that we typically see.
Like from a technology perspective, is there a technology or a way that you're starting to think about addressing some of these trends?
Of course, we think of RFID because it's the...
So hang on here. So like it's not 1994, RFID is not cool. We're in a big ideas session, right? Like we can't possibly talk about RFID at a big ideas session.
Yeah.
What's up?
Well, it's interesting, right? Because I think some people still think of RFID back in the 2000s where it was kind of case level and the technology was just starting to get kicked off. But a lot's changed since then. I think there's really two key things. First of all, the technology itself has gotten, from a performance perspective, smaller and a lot more higher performing. Obviously, price has changed a little bit since then. But the big thing is that in the retail enterprise, we've discovered that the right application really shouldn't start at case level. It should start at item level. And you'll see a lot of retailers talk about utilizing RFID for inventory management. It's kind of where we started back in 2010, 2011. Because when you look at RFID and you look at a portfolio, there's really two key ways to think about it. And JJ and I were talking about this a lot, which is when you look at sensors, you've got a one-to-one sensor and a one-to-many sensor. And one-to-one sensors are like NFC RFID. So everyone that's ever used pay on your phone, you tap, and it's kind of a one-to-one sensor. Or a 2D barcode or a 1D barcode, you kind of scan one-to-one sensor. RFID, we're talking about UHF RFID, is a one-to-many sensor. So you collect a lot of data very, very quickly. So as retailers discover this technology can actually help them get their inventory accurate in their supply chain to make sure they have the right product in the right place at the right time for in-store shopping or omni-channel shopping was kind of the foundation. But then as you start building out the enterprise use cases, you look at things like getting data analytics for theft, looking at point of sale and making it a lot more faster and convenient. So RFID, which people might think is this 2000 technology, has really become this critical foundational sensor technology for the enterprise and the next generation of retail. And we'll talk a little bit later, I think, about AI and how important RFID sensors can be to get your inventory and product data accurate for AI in the future. So we see this as a really big idea and really foundational, not just now for retail enterprise, but the future of retail enterprise.
Yeah, so like my team was sort of looking at RFID and they came to me with RFID and I was like, RFID, like, come on, man. It just like prevents you from going through exit gates at stores. And I was pretty skeptical when they came to me with that. And so I was like, how does this fit in with sort of the way we think about the world? And so the team was like, well, right, we're customer centric at Amazon, right? And so RFID, traditionally has been used for the benefit of the merchant. And my team was like, we've figured out a way to make this for the benefit of the shopper, not the merchant. And so what they explained to me was this notion of, well, we have these computer vision based just walk out stores, a bunch of cameras on the ceiling, right? Some sensors on the shelves. And they said, but that doesn't necessarily work in every case. There's, t-shirts get all rumpled up and the stores get messy and stuff. And they said, we've figured out a way to take RFID, tag the products with it in the store, and enable people to walk out without a checkout for like things like t-shirts, concert merch, other sports, things that you find in stores. And so I was like, all right, well, this is kind of interesting. It sort of fits in with the bigger story we're trying to tell about frictionless checkout. And here we are now. So we can sort of take a look at how it works to give you guys an idea.
That'd be great.
Hi, I'm JJ, Vice President of Just Walk Out Technology. Today, I'm here in Hartland, Texas, at the Global Home Made Good Baseball's Texas Rangers. In October, we launched a new store here with our hospitality partners, Delaware. The Easy Hour store. Shopping at the Easy Hour store is, well, easy. Let's go make it right. Stadiums and arenas are always trying to do an experience, but that can be hard for small and concession stadiums. Fans want to get everything and get back to their system without edge. And of course, stadium and the operators need their bottom line by providing fast, frictionless experience for their fans. This store uses one of the Just Walk Out Technology's newest innovations, RFID. It's the perfect technology for making people to buy things like clothing, phone fingers, and other merchandise at concerts and sporting events. How does this work? RFID allows fans to enter the store, shop naturally for any item that they would normally select, and then exit the store through the gates that automatically read the RFID text. With the Just Walk Out technology merchants with RFID, fans can grab their favorite hoodies, sweatshirts, or hats and get back to their city quickly, leading happier fans to more cities. After they choose the gear they want, customers can either carry or wear their items out of the store. They simply tap a credit card or scan their phone over an Amazon One device. And as they exit through the gates, RFID tags are read and they're correctly charged for the items. Retailers love this technology as it lowers operating costs and improves revenue. Inventory accuracy, reduced shrinking, and increased traffic are just fans love it as there's no lines and no checking, just the fastest way to shop. Check it out next time you're here at Global.
All right. So I've got to say, as someone from Dallas that's been a longtime Rangers fan, I don't know if there's a correlation in winning the World Series and using JWell apparel RFID, but we'll take it. So it's a really unique experience, and having going through the stadium, again, something that's really unique. You just walk out, don't stop and pay, and what a great experience. And I think, are there other locations, JJ, that besides Globe Life?
Yeah, so you'll find it at Globe Life, where I think I'm PR approved to say that if you deploy Just Walk Out technology, you will win the World Series every year. But you'll also find it at Hard Rock Stadium, where the Miami Dolphins play. You'll find it at Lumen Field, where the Seahawks play. And we actually prototyped it originally at the Climate Pledge Arena, where the Kraken hockey team plays. But these are real stores, right? Yep. This is not a prototype technology we're talking about here. We're rolling this thing out, and a lot of people are using it.
Yeah, and how long does it take to get one of these set up? I think that's a big question I get from time to time. How long does it take? Is it easy, complicated?
Yeah, that's I think a big difference between RFID-based stores and maybe what people know with some of the computer vision-based Just Walk Out stores. So all the tech for this store is just in the exit gates. right? We don't have to hang cameras. We don't have to run network cables. We don't have to do any of that stuff. And so just walk out RFID stores are much faster to set up than the existing technologies. We went from like concept to launch in Miami in a period of about 6 weeks, like from the first time a salesperson had a conversation with someone, at that stadium. And so we can retrofit existing spaces by just plunking down a gate where you want people to check out. We can set up temporary spaces like they did at Lumen Field, where they set up just basically cordoned off a store with stanchions around the edge of the store. So you can get up and running like really fast with this technology, which is a big benefit over, some of the more complicated solutions. But like it might seem like our sort of path or the path here was easy. Like in reality, we've been working together for the better part of a half decade, I think, on trying to come up with some way to use RFID and just walk out. So like, I don't know, do you want to talk about a little bit about like, how did we get here?
Yeah, I think it's interesting. I think the power of coming together around this. So we've been working on this about 3 years timeframe overall, really to understand the right sensor tech. How do we get the right sensor tech to work in all the use case variants? How do we then work closely with JJ's team around the analytics capabilities they have and the deep science capability they have to really make this work? Because it's truly a unique combination of really high performing, high quality sensors that are meant for purpose around this technology, and then how we integrate it with the team.
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely, it's been an adventure. And I think like this is something I'm really proud about, the partnership between our two companies. This was not the first thing we tried with RFID and just walk out at all. We'd been trying to figure out how to integrate this stuff into grocery stores to solve unique problems there and other kinds of sort of complex merchandise that we had been having trouble with the computer vision based stuff. And, we sort of kept just plugging away at it. And that's sort of an example of, I think, the long-term thinking at both of our companies. Like we knew something was here, right? But it wasn't sort of immediately obvious what that was or how it would ultimately sort of emerge.
Agreed. And I think too, what makes it unique is, again, it's all around the customer and working together. We're always challenged on how do we get the best experience for the customer. The one thing too that's interesting about apparel, it's a very multi-dimensional SKU, right? So you've got size, color, style, all these dimensions. And with RFID, based on the serialization of RFID, you can really understand all those dimensions relatively quickly. And I think the analytic unlock around some of that is quite interesting.
Yeah, I mean, like certainly, like if anyone has been to an apparel store versus, I don't know, a stadium, food and beverage store, like, it's different. Like it's like controlled chaos in one of those merch stores, right? People are throwing stuff everywhere. Stuff's completely disorderly. And that's a real problem for a computer vision based solution, right? Like the cameras need to know what they're seeing and just not possible all the time with merch. And so like, we're pretty excited about some of the new sort of possibilities that this brings to the merchants that are selling this type of stuff. So the first thing, as I sort of mentioned, is like cost is decoupled now completely from the square footage of the store. So if you have a giant department store, like the deployment cost is really just in these gates. You don't have to modify any of the rest of the store. And that's a big deal, right? Like you don't want store downtime, as you're trying to move to a new way of merchandising. The other thing that's kind of cool about them is, they're basically portable. So if you have one of these gates and you want to set up a temporary sort of merchandising space somewhere, you can move these things around. Like when we set up the first store at Lumen, they just took a corner of their arena that was sort of unused, plunked the gates down, and bam, you got a store. So that's pretty cool. The other thing is that it really does enable a whole new range of selection, right? Like, and I think this is something I didn't know about RFID that I learned working with you guys. I was like, these tags only work in certain environments, right? Like there's a lot of stuff where it just won't work. And I think you've proven to us that they can do a lot more than you can think. Like in terms of the types of merchandise you support and stuff, like can you talk about that a little bit and the future?
Yeah, you bet. I mean, today people think of RFID because there's been a lot of growth, a lot of retailers talking about apparel, but really now you look at general merchandise, there's a lot of things that are happening in the general merchandise space, enabling all these items, because really those items have the same need from an inventory accuracy, consumer convenience, right, theft analytic perspective, and all the enterprise retail applications. So we're working very hard to make sure that every item in a store can be tagged and identified, because we really, again, see this as a big enterprise shift and retail transformation that's occurring to enable things like this, where you can literally walk in, have a total frictionless checkout and walk right out. So very focused in the science around that. And again, it was interesting in the early days, people would say, well, does it work here? Does it work here? And I don't think that's really a question with the Amazon team much anymore.
Yeah, and I know like in some of the early days, we were like, one of the things we were trying to get the RFID stuff to work for was, we have these grocery stores, right? And I don't know, steaks that have variable weights. And we were trying to slap RFID tags on steaks and things like that. And I mean, I think like you showed us a lot about what the art of the possible is there, even like types of stuff that you would have never thought possible, really quite possible when it comes to some of this, the new RFID tagging technologies that you guys have.
Yeah. We're really excited about it. And I think one of the other things too I really want to talk through is AI. So I know that's been one of the topics you hear from a technology perspective. I'm sure a lot of people have seen a lot of AI out in the show. So can you talk a little bit about how you're thinking about AI in the sense of JWell?
Yeah, it wouldn't be a conference in 2024 without talking about AI, and so I think like a lot of people probably have some maybe misgivings or misunderstandings of how the RFID technology works, right? Like you're used to seeing it at like loss prevention gates at stores, right? And you think it's like magic, like, okay, I walk through with a tag, sirens go off, that's bad. To charge people's credit cards correctly for the items they are taking out of a store with RFID requires a lot of heavy lifting. I think that's not necessarily obvious to someone who's just sort of walking through the store. Those gates that we put in our stores, they're reading tons of tags off the shelves all the time, right? Like RFID signals like propagate everywhere. And so what we need to do to make that store possible is we need to say, this person is walking through the gate with this and only this stuff, right? And charge them correctly. And there might be another gate right next to that gate where someone else is walking through with stuff, or one directly across it, as you'll find at the Dolphin Stadium. And so to do that takes a lot of pretty heavy lifting on the AI side. So we have, I'll just say, lots of antennas in those RFID gates, all of which are reading a bunch of different signals, all of which are tuned a very specific way, aimed a very specific direction. And so those things are getting massive numbers of signals coming through them at all times. And the ML and AI, what we do with that is we've trained a model that can say, of all of these signals that I'm reading, of which there might be hundreds or thousands, which ones just passed through this gate with this person at this time? And that person might be holding some of those RFID tags under, their armpit as they're walking through, or they might have two tags sandwiched together. Like, the world's a very complicated place when you start to actually deploy this technology. And like AI has been really sort of important for us as we've tried to actually build these real working stores to make that happen.
Yeah, interesting.
Yeah.
And you talked about someone putting something underneath their arm. How do you think about theft with JWell? What's your perspective on that makes it a little unique?
Yeah, theft is a big topic as well, right? This year and last year. We didn't design Just Walk Out, either the camera-based stores or the RFID stores, to stop theft. That wasn't the goal at all. The goal is to make a seamless checkout experience for customers. It turns out, though, that the side effect of doing that is that we have some pretty positive benefits in terms of reducing shrink. So in a camera-based JWO store, Just Walk Out store, it's our job to know what you took off the shelf and to charge you for it, right? So if you go into a camera-based Just Walk Out store, grab a candy bar, stuff it in your pocket, and walk out, it's our job to get that right. Now, in a traditional store, if you did that, that would be theft, right? But in a Just Walk Out store, an action that would have been theft becomes a purchase, right? And so it's kind of a neat side effect of it. And the same is true in these RFID stores, right?
Yes.
If you had an RFID store, maybe that was enabled with bins, right? You put your stuff into a bin. Well, people might forget to put something in a bin, right? They might have stuffed something in their pocket. They forget to put it in a bin. In that scenario, they end up stealing from the store, right? But the same type of store, when you walk through one of our RFID exit gates, it's just a purchase, right? And so I don't know that we haven't talked about any branding. We're maybe making the world a more honest place just by default, the way the stuff is implemented. But I think like a thing that we have learned is that RFID is not magic. Like there's a lot of operational sort of knowledge that a store owner needs to make this stuff work. And I think that's an area where we've been really impressed with what you guys bring to the table. Do you want to talk about sort of how do you operationalize this stuff in real life and actually get the value from it?
Yeah, appreciate that. Again, a couple things that we've been really working on collaboratively is when you install the system, how do you look at it from an end-to-end perspective? So it might be things until you get to source tagging where all the brands are putting RFID on its source. How do you put printers in a store to be able that you actually get the right data on the tag and get the tag on the right product? So we're putting together systems and solutions that enable the operators in the store to make sure they get the right tags on the right product from an operational perspective. And then thinking about things from an inventory perspective, right, along with the just walk out perspective. So I think those are some of the things that we're thinking through collaboratively with JJ about how do we put a whole solution together that allows right now these stadiums to actually implement RFID. Simple gates putting in, as JJ talked about, quite easy to put in. And then our team helps on the implementation around the printer systems, all the other ecosystem solutions that make sure we're doing the right thing, the right tag, right printer to get on the right product, so we can make sure we have a good flow of product in the JWO stores.
And you guys have been doing some research around this and how this is sort of affecting, the purchasing decisions or the store choice decisions. Right. What have you guys found there?
So we just commissioned some research that we just released actually this week, and it's quite interesting. Two real key things. I think when you look at the aggregate research that we did across all consumers, roughly 45% of consumers would actually choose a self-checkout that had an automated way of checking out versus scanning a barcode, which is interesting. The second thing is for Gen Z. I mean, they really like kind of frictionless checkout. So Gen Zers are telling us that roughly half, a little bit over half, would actually switch to a store that actually had kind of more of a frictionless checkout that didn't require barcode scanning. So you can see that from a different generational perspective, there's still a big contingent overall that wants to have frictionless checkout, but you can see that proliferate a little bit more from a Gen Z perspective to the point where they would actually potentially switch to a different retailer based on frictionless checkout. So very interesting.
Yeah, and that's certainly one thing that we want to try to make the promise to for the people we're working with. Like increased sales is certainly an angle that for us is really important.
Yep.
We see retailers getting value out of the RFID-based stores in kind of three ways. So, one way that, we see it is increased throughput, right? So if there was a 10-minute long line to buy a t-shirt at a stadium and now that line is just like moving real fast, they sell a lot more stuff. And so retailers are pretty thrilled about that. The other thing we see is, as we talked about, that reduction in shrink, right?
Yes.
I mean, it just is harder to make a mistake and not pay for your items in a just walk out store. But then the other thing we see is that, you might have had to, staff up for the peak load during the store's operations at a stadium, right? And so you might have during a game, you've got, 2 periods in hockey or two intermissions in hockey. And so you got to staff for the giant load of people that are going to come into that store for those 2 intermissions, right? But with a just walk out with RFID store, I can have a couple traditional checkouts if I want for people that don't want to try the new thing. But 1 or 2 of these gates can put a lot of shoppers through the exit gates and really optimize the labor in those stores. And even more importantly, free up the people in those stores to help me find the size I need, or, to answer the question if this is an authentic jersey, or what this weird strap is for on the back of a hockey jersey, all those sorts of things, right? So we see that, the store associates are doing a lot more like interesting interaction with customers that the customers like in these stores, because I mean, a lot of us have been to a store where you couldn't find the size or color that you wanted. And, that's really a lot easier in these stores when you free up the staff to do that kind of thing.
Yeah.
So I was going to ask, the neat thing about this, and I didn't know this either at the beginning when we did this, is when we apply RFID to these items in the store, we're sort of assigning each item a unique ID in the store. We're not saying that there's not one RFID tag on all medium men's Kraken jerseys, right? Each one has its own unique sort of ID. Yep. What type of stuff does that enable, and like why should I care about that, I guess?
Yeah. I think, again, the beauty about bringing serialization together with a sensor like UHF RFID is that you're able to differentiate things that you can't visually see. So when you go into an apparel store like a JWO store and you look at, okay, is that a small, medium, large, you can actually differentiate between all the dimensions of the SKU to make sure that A, you've got the the store merchandised correctly, right? You don't want to have a bunch of medium sitting out in the store when your average big flow item is a large. So you want to have the right mix. You can replenish with the right mix. So imagine even today in a stadium, we have a high flux of people coming through one of those stores and you run out of mediums. Just so happens that the mediums are flying off the shelf. You now know those mediums are off the shelf. You can immediately replenish that because in the stadiums in particular, you've got a very short window in which you got to maximize your sales. So high velocity, high churn, how can you make sure you're replenishing appropriately to make sure, again, the holistic consumer experience is good? So I think that's a really interesting part. The other part is, as we talk about the future of AI, if you think about, like, we've done a lot of studies in the apparel industry where the average retailer is roughly 65% accurate at the SKU level. Now at the unit level, say they're 92% accurate when they do their physical inventory. But when you drill down to the SKU level, size, color, style, et cetera, they're 65% accurate. But if you're 65% accurate in your inventory position, and you're going to build AI on top of that, right? You're going to build AI on top of 65% accuracy, forecast planning, replenishment, right? The whole supply chain. So we see this from a product. You can build great product attributes in your AI strategy, but do you really have the right product? Is really something that we're very focused on around why this matters. Because again, you can have the right unit, but not the right SKU. Customer's not going to really buy anything. They're not going to be satisfied because you didn't have their size, didn't have their color. And people have a lot of choices today, right? To actually look elsewhere.
Yeah, and that's been something we've definitely learned, is that if you put garbage into your machine learning algorithms, they are going to perform really badly on the backside. And so having really high quality data going into these algorithms is absolutely essential if you're going to try to build something that is trying to get the receipt right 100% of the time.
Agreed. And this is why we think it's a big idea, JJ, going back to your original 1994 question of RFID.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think we're anywhere near the end of where we're going to take this either. Like, yes. I mean, I think there's a lot of possibility here.
What do you see as next for JWell?
Well, so I think there's a lot of really cool things that this is going to enable. One is pop-up stores are going to become a piece of cake, right? I mean, pop-up stores are hard not only because you need to set up a store really fast and get it running, you got to hire people to staff them. And like in this country right now, it is extremely hard to hire people. And so I think that's going to be one thing. I think new types of selection, especially with some of the innovations you guys are working on the tagging side, are going to become possible with our RFID, where people are going to go, oh my gosh, I had no idea that you could apply an RFID tag to that thing.
Yes.
And make it work in real life. And then, like, I think some of the really exciting possibilities around like the provenance of items, right? To say like, this is an authentic item and its RFID tag proves it so. You can imagine in a sporting world that's a really interesting thing to start looking at. Really anywhere where there's like collectibles or sort of unique one-of-a-kind items, it's going to become really interesting with some of these RFID-based technologies. So, yeah.
Agreed. And one of the interesting ideas we were talking about is like this concept of pop-up stores taking the solution, taking the store to the demand. Right? You have unique events that are happening with large populations. How do you have the flexibility to actually take the store to the demand, right, versus the demand coming to the store? I think that's a really interesting perspective from a pop-up store perspective.
Yeah, and I think another interesting thing that we're going to see is like right now, we have this sort of RFID only store out here. We've got a vision only store down at the front of Javits. There's no reason that we can't combine these technologies and potentially other technologies as well. So, we might find really interesting blends of both RFID coupled with the computer vision stuff to enable like pretty amazing new retail experiences. Like I think like for us, we want to create that sort of magical moment where you're like, I have no idea how this just happened, but I just purchased this thing and it feels awesome. And so I think together there's a lot of possibility there. So it's an exciting time. And I think, I don't know, we'll see. We may come up here with some new innovations on the Big Ideas stage next year with you guys and say, holy crap, we never thought that was going to be possible when we were sitting up there last year, and it'll be a pretty exciting time.
Look forward to it.
Awesome. All right, well, I think we're out of time. We won't keep you guys from beer and wine. So thanks for coming, and let us know if you have any questions. We'll be at our booths and up here afterwards. So
cool. Thank you.